Hello, my name is Robert Smith. We're here at the Museum of American Armor in Old Bethpage, Long Island. There are over 50 operational military vehicles in this museum. The museum represents the history of American soldiers that have fought in multiple wars. Specifically, it focuses on World War II history. The vehicles in this museum represent the soldiers from Long Island as well as across America during World War II. Let's go in and take a look. Good morning. I'm here with Kevin Carroll, the Community Affairs Director of the Museum of American Armor. And we're here to discuss some of the history of some of the vehicles and the museum itself. Thank you for joining me today.
You're quite welcome. Thank you for coming.
Your name is Kevin Carroll, correct?
It is.
And I have your permission to record today?
You do.
Okay. And what's your role or title at the museum?
I wear many hats, Robert. I'm
Okay.
called the Community Affairs Director. I'm in charge of any number of things, recruiting volunteers, speaking with the press, much like we're doing today, and any number of things. I'm a volunteer here, and every volunteer does everything required of him. We're an all-volunteer museum.
So the work that's done at the museum is by volunteers?
Absolutely. We only have one paid employee. He's the museum director in charge of overall operations. But yes, everything we do at the museum is done by volunteers.
And now the museum is, what's the mission of the museum?
Our primary mission, Robert, is to the acquisition, the restoration, the maintenance and operation of military vehicles of all eras with primary importance of World War II vehicles.
And the vehicles are all operational, correct?
Every one of them, any vehicle that's inside this building, Robert, under this roof, is an operational vehicle, yes. And
do the volunteers keep them running?
They do. They do. We have some very, very talented mechanical volunteers on staff here, and they do a marvelous job.
And with regard to how was the museum founded?
The museum was founded, we opened June 6th of 2014. Our history went back a little bit further than that. We really have our roots in the nearby Cradle Aviation Museum and the Air Power Museum out in Farmingdale. People who like military aircraft have a tendency to like military vehicles. And then a certain faction of those people over in Air Power Museum split off amicably and started the museum here with the help of Mr. Kadish.
And who's Mr. Kadish?
Mr. Kadish is our founder and president. He's a patriot, industrialist. He's a Long Islander. He's an historian, and he was very generous in his assistance in establishing the museum.
And what was his vision for the museum?
I think his mission, Robert, is one of his themes is World War II still matters. So World War II, as we're speaking right now, is over 80 years. And yet the ramifications of that war are still with us, be it in the Ukraine, immediately after World War II, of course, Korea. So for the very end of World War II in 1945 to the present in 2025, World War II was still with us in so many ways.
And with regard to the press coverage you had mentioned, what kind of press coverage do you normally have at the museum?
We're Channel 12. News Channel 12 is very generous with their coverage of the museum. We had a certain segment a couple of weeks ago, road trips on Long Island, where we were featured. Newsday covers us, Channel 2, Channel 4, Channel 7 locally in the metropolitan area. So we get our fair share of coverage in the press and also the electronic media.
And with regard to the museum pieces or vehicles, when you say they're operational, do they ever go out?
They do. We do a lot of our operational stuff right here on the museum grounds and up at the Old Bethpage Village Restoration, which is adjacent to us. And also certain vehicles are in fact registered with New York State so that we can travel on the nearby roads for a radius of perhaps 4 or 5 miles. We go to parades, veterans events, and things of that nature.
And do you have a favorite?
I'm a little bit prejudiced. Yes, I do. I have helped with my friend Chris Sir. We have done a number of restorations, external restorations of vehicles. And so I might say, yes, the M20, which Chris and I recently refurbished, and I have the great privilege of driving on many occasions.
Can we take a look?
I'd be delighted to show it to you.
Perfect. So this is the M20 vehicle?
It is, in fact, yes. This is one of our scout vehicles, reconnaissance vehicles used primarily in the European theater of World War II.
And who manufactured these vehicles?
It's made by Ford Motor Company.
Okay, and when did they make them?
They made them between 1942 and 1945. I think they were about 8,300 of the M8s made, and its kissing cousin here, the M20, about 2,500.
And what was the purpose of these?
Well, the M20 was specifically designed to be, it was called a utility car, so it had any number of purposes. We have ours configured as you would have seen it in the reconnaissance and command role. So an area commander, a battlefield commander, would have a vehicle like this, has an open top, so he has a good view of the battlefield, has two very powerful radios so he can communicate tactically and strategically with troops, and it is lightly armored and armed with that 50 caliber machine gun.
And now my understanding is that General Patton himself was fond of these vehicles.
General Patton had an M20, yes, which he specifically outfitted for himself. It had a windshield. It had his trademark horn. Patton had any number of vehicles. He had Jeeps. He had command cars, which we have one of over here. But one of his signatures, in addition to his 3-star flag, which he always insisted upon, was horns, air horns. He always had monstrous brass horns.
And would this have been equipped with that?
It certainly was, yes. And he has his own windshield up here, too. Patton was very hands-on general. He was very mobile. He was always in contact with his troops.
And so one of the concepts I think people are very familiar with is nose art, or art on the front of a plane.
Mm-hmm.
Did the soldiers or servicemen during World War II have similar kind of expression on tanks?
They did. Probably not as elaborate on a lot of aircraft that we're thinking of, but yeah, there were some. A lot of them these were dirty vehicles. They're out in the field a lot, so a lot of them were chalked on. They were sometimes crude, but yeah, there was plenty of art.
And you drive this particular vehicle at events, correct?
I do. Primarily, yes, I do.
And this vehicle does have a depiction like that, correct?
It does.
Let's take a look.
Okay.
So this is the piece here.
This is there was a cartoon which I think originated around 1914, 1915, and ran ironically right up until the I think 1944, just before the end of the war, called Crazy Cat. Crazy Cat was a lovelorn cat. She was kind of a hippie flower child of the 1940s, 1930s, but her erstwhile friend, was a pretty nasty mouse called Ignatz. And Ignatz, although Crazy Cat was in love with Ignatz, he didn't return that love. And he would often, well, he did return things, but it was often in terms of a brick. So we kind of turned that cartoon around. Maybe a GI would have been fond of Crazy Cat, and of course he's in the European theater where this vehicle is based, and instead of Crazy Cat being the recipient of the brickbat, it's probably Adolf Hitler as well.
Hitler's getting the brick from
Ignatz. He's going to take it, right. By the way, brickbat is talking about vehicle markings. Oftentimes a vehicle would be named, or have its name, the first letter of it for the company. So this vehicle is in B Company of the 82nd Reconnaissance Division, which worked with the 2nd Armored Division. And it is B Company, so you see the B here. The 17th vehicle in the line of march. And so it's brickbat, which kind of stirred, or kind of was the birth of the brickbat and Crazy Cat.
So here we have the ambulance. This is the WC-54, correct?
That's correct. Made by Dodge.
Dodge. And when were they made?
Again, they were made probably 1942 to 1945. I think about 25,000 of them were made of this particular model.
And I know it's obvious, but what was their purpose?
It was to transport wounded soldiers. It could carry 4 litters, if I remember right, 2 on either side, or more patients than that if the litters were folded up, so it could carry up to 7 patients. A little bit better suspension system than a lot of the heavier vehicles that were made to carry cargo and things of that nature, to hopefully give the wounded soldiers a little bit better ride. It had a heater, which most World War II vehicles did not have, and again, in an attempt to keep the wounded more comfortable.
Would women have served in this type of vehicle?
I think they probably would have, Robert. I don't know, particularly frontline. They were certainly wounded soldiers were brought back to rear hospitals where female nurses were. But with the changing nature of World War II, the very fluid nature of World War II, rear hospitals oftentimes became frontline hospitals. So, but yes, they probably would have been in vehicles like this, if not drivers, as medics themselves.
Okay, and so we would have, will we see WAC or Women's Army Corps
Yes.
service members
Mhm.
have served in these vehicles?
Most likely, yes. I think there were 59,000 female soldiers or female nurses in the Women's Army Corps, yes.
And with regard to the museum's depiction, I know there's several posters of WAC service members
Yes,
in the museum.
there are.
And how does the, you know, how does the WAC, how is it represented by the museum?
Well, we do have a mannequin here who represents an Army nurse. We do have those posters around. And then we'll often talk about, we talked about before, about World War II still mattering, with Mr. Kadish's favorite saying. And World War II really brought women into the forefront in so many areas. On the industrial front here on Long Island, there's so many men were out fighting the war. The rise of women in the workplace, and of course the importance of female nurses in hospital areas.
So this was the vehicle you were describing inside the museum?
This is the famous Higgins boat, yes, used in Europe and the Pacific during World War II.
And why is it called the Higgins boat?
It's made by Mr. Higgins at Higgins Industries down in New Orleans. He was a boat manufacturer, among other things, and he specialized in swamp-type boats. And in adaptation for the war, he built the LCVP, landing craft, vehicle, and personnel.
And how far to the shore could these come?
This could come right up onto the shore. That was one of their saving graces. It had a very flat bottom. It was designed to come up onto the sand and then withdraw because it had a drivetrain and prop kind of in a tunnel area, so it was protected from the sand. So it would come right up onto the sand and then pull back out again and get another load of personnel, vehicles, or supplies.
And again, this would be the vehicle, one of the vehicles actually used in the Normandy invasion.
For sure, yes.
As depicted in Private Ryan.
Yes. So we have a steel ramp here, but the bulk of the boat is made of mahogany plywood.
And with regard to the vehicle, I see we have some tracks here. Would these have been here?
Yes, they were for traction for personnel, but also it could carry a small vehicle, like a Jeep, or something like that. So this gave traction, particularly to load the vehicle, as well as offloading.
How many people could this hold?
This, I believe, was rated for about 35, 36 fully armed troops. If it had a Jeep in it, probably a dozen armed troops along with it, and of course, tons of supplies.
Do you think that the operations here, do they represent or reflect Long Islanders' contribution to the war, to World War II?
Well, they do, certainly in terms of soldiers and GIs of World War II. Long Island is really famous for its aviation industry, Grumman, Republic, which are right nearby to where we are. Electronics companies like Sperry, Potter Instrument. But really, Long Island's contribution in terms of armored vehicles were for crews. We're one of the largest areas of the country with veterans from World War II. Of course, they're certainly are fading out now, but from Korea and Vietnam to the present. So really, Long Island's contribution has been the men and women of the Army, Navy, and Marine Corps.
And how about the overall? Obviously, the pieces represent America at large. I think in the greater effort.
They do. Most of our vehicles are American, but we also have vehicles from Great Britain and Germany.
Well, thank you very much.
You're quite
welcome.
welcome.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for coming.